welcome back to another session of the recap. As we're going through our Problem of God series, we have just finished up the week on the question of evil and suffering. That if God is good and all powerful, then why is there evil and suffering in the world? Which is just such a big, deep question that a lot of people wrestle with. It's the question I've gotten most as a pastor, as I've been in ministry. Have people asked me that question the most? And just right up front, I think we need to acknowledge just in that question. I would say 90% of the time when people ask me that, it's because they're going through something, some type of pain or loss, um, and it's an emotionally driven question, which is totally fine. It's a natural question to ask when you are going through something. It makes total sense to be asking that. But I just want to acknowledge that and just say, what I found is there is no set of words that anyone can say to make whatever pain or trials or suffering that you're experiencing to just make it disappear. So what I found most helpful during those times is just to be there as a friend and love on somebody and just acknowledge their pain and rest with them in that. And that's more for my Christian brothers and sisters who might be wanting to give some people some answers as they're going through stuff. Often that's not super helpful. If they ask you directly, you can try and give them some tidbits, but usually it's the ministry and power of your presence that they need more than answers. But this is a question that a lot of people wonder about. Maybe after some healing is gone by, we really do search for answers. So it's really thinking through, man, why does there have to be all this pain that's associated with life? Why does there have to be suffering? The atheist answer to that question is because God doesn't exist. There isn't one. There's a popular atheist philosopher, J.L. Mackie, I believe I'm getting his name right. Don't have my paper pulled up, but he's quoted as saying that if there is a good thing, for example, God, then it will eliminate evil as far as it can. And so if this thing is all powerful, then it will eliminate all evil. So by that logic, there would be at least no good God. And it's a good argument, but it's not necessarily true, as it fails to address the question of what if you eliminated one evil and it caused a greater evil to occur, right? So it's sort of eliminating, and it has a base assumption that we'll sort of get to in a little bit. So I wanted to sort of give you what I think God's answer to why would he allow some of this stuff to go on. And again, some of these answers can seem, I don't know, not sufficient. Because when you think about some of the great evil and hurt that can go on, it's hard to see some of these, but I'm going to dive into it anyways. So the first answer that I think we need to look at is free will. The idea that every human is free to make whatever choices they want. Every single day, every single second, we get to pick the kind of people we want to be. We get to choose how we're going to react and handle every situation that comes our way. And because of that, we can choose good or bad. Either one. We can choose to make people's life great, or we can choose to make other people's lives miserable. So that's kind of baked into the free will bread that humans have choice, and because of that, we can choose to do good or bad. And so a lot of evil just comes from people's bad choices. They make bad choices, and it causes pain and suffering on others. And, I think if we all examined ourselves, we would realize that choices that we have made, have negatively affected other people. And sometimes the choices that we make, we don't even realize the consequences that they're going to have, or we may never even see some of the negative consequences that they have. But at the end of the day, The Bible describes God as love being his chief characteristic. That he is a loving being, and he created humanity and wanted a relationship with humanity. That is his desire. It's his main operating system is to love and be in relationship. Um, and that's what he wanted with humanity. And to do that, he has to give humanity free choice. Otherwise, it's no relationship. It's just like building robots or whatever. So, with that comes the ability to choose, and we can choose good or bad. So I think that's part one of why is there evil and suffering in the world? Because free will exists. Because we are beings who get to make our own choices, and God has set us up that way. And God said in Deuteronomy that as heaven as His witness, He's set everything before us. We can choose life, and that life is found in Him, or we can go the other way if we want. But that way just leads to death, and we see that across the globe. So number one answer there is free will, that we have free will and that's a thing. And then after that, the base assumption that we were talking about earlier with the atheistic sort of viewpoint of, if there's a God and he's good, then he'll eliminate all evil kind of deal. There's an assumption that runs underneath that statement. This basically says, evil and suffering is pointless. And I don't, the Bible doesn't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I think the human experience doesn't quite agree with that. Um, Now, obviously, this doesn't include every single evil act, but most of the time, it's through pain and suffering that we actually can experience good. A lot of times, good comes out of pain and suffering and evil. It happens often in our own lives as we go through something tough. We often grow or learn something about ourselves or become better versions of who we were. And so, a lot of times, good does come from suffering. The Bible is littered with examples of somebody going through some really tough, challenging times, coming out the other side, and a whole lot of good coming out of that. I think about my own life, what I've been through in my childhood, some of the things that I've had to experience or endure, just abuse and different things like that. And while I wish I wouldn't have gone through that, because I'm still as a grown man, still trying to work through and deal with childhood hurts, but I know that I have had several conversations with different people who were going through things that I have already been through. And having come out the other side, I can encourage them and lift them up and give them advice. And so good has come out of my personal struggle and pain. I mean, Jesus is the ultimate example of that. He was a good man who didn't do anything wrong, and he experienced evil and pain and suffering at the hands of others, only to have the ultimate good come out of it, which is salvation, the ability to have a relationship with God. So pain and suffering are not pointless. There's often good that comes from it, which leads me to the last part of this. And I think the last part of this is God just asks us to trust in His wisdom. God asks us to trust that He's wise and that He knows what He's doing. I just recently listened to a podcast series done by the Bible Project on wisdom literature. Super good. Recommend going to listen to it. Spotify podcast guy myself, but they broke down Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job, and it was really cool to kind of see those books put like that. I've never really heard anybody break them down quite the way they did in this one, but kind of Job, I think, really speaks to sort of what we're talking to today. And basically, Job was described as the most righteous man who ever lived, right? So he's, the author's really trying to get you this is a good dude, right? And we get this sort of secret knowledge, and he's living a good life, man. He's got a great family, wife. He's got tons of cows and whatnot. He's rich, right? He's got plenty of money and property and people working for him and whatnot. And it all goes away. Basically his whole family except for his wife dies. Everything that he has is burnt up or stolen. Even his health starts to fail, and he hasn't quote unquote done anything wrong. Like he's still this good, upstanding guy, and so it kind of the story begs you to ask the question: well, why would what does this say about God that He would allow this trouble on Job, who's a good dude, right? Because we think if you're good, you should get good all the time. But it doesn't always work like that. And so in those moments, what does that say about God, right? And that's sort of where this evil and suffering, it's the same question basically of like, well, if God's so good, then why did these bad things happen to people who are innocent or don't deserve it? And so Job he finally at one point just gets fed up and he starts making accusations against God. God, you're not paying attention to what's going on down here. You don't care about us. And then he goes so far as to saying, actually, you know what? I think you like it when the little guy loses. I think that you enjoy it when bad things happen to good people. And so eventually God brings him up into the throne room and gives him a virtual tour of the universe. And basically says like, all right, Job, since you know so much, man, how does gravity work? How far away is the sun? How does all this stuff hold itself together? Who manages the wild animals that are out in the fields giving birth? Like who, and Job realizes like, whoa, there is so much more going on here than I had previously thought. And it's sort of God's point as he's communicating with him is like, look, Job, I get it, man, but my perspective and is so much larger than yours. You have a 1 foot perspective. I have a 1 million foot perspective. Like I know about sunsets and landscapes that are happening on planets you'll never even know exist. Like that's God's perspective, and He's intimately aware of all of it. And what He asked Job is just to trust that His wisdom is controlling is in charge of all this. And it's tough for us to think about that when it comes to our own pain. Um, but it sort of goes along with like the butterfly effect of like, man, how do like if we change one little thing, then who knows, what's going to happen. We have to trust that God's wisdom sees what's happening 3-4 moves down the line that we can't conceive of. Maybe our pain and our suffering or some of the stuff that we're going through is ultimately for a better end or preventing something worse from happening. At the end of the day, God asks us to trust His wisdom more than our own. And as humans, we don't have the perspective that God has. And so we're not qualified to say like this is right or this is wrong. We just have to trust God at the end of the day and know that He works out all situations for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. And that, evil and suffering aren't pointless. And it should make us want to measure our choices a little bit more carefully and realize that, every choice we make has an effect on not just ourselves, but the people around us, whether that's good or bad. And again, some that we'll never, ever even know happened. So I think that's something to chew on. Again, this is a much larger discussion. If you have more questions, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I'll try and answer them best I can. Again, this is a personal question usually, so I understand that side of it. But yeah, so I hope you guys got something out of that, and I will see you next time.